Well, this is incredibly exciting, Janice. Back again in the hot
Yes.
seat. Very, very excited indeed. Today we're going to be discussing the unfolding of the Tesseract and what it all means. And I, for one, am deeply excited because I've worked a little bit with sacred geometry in my own work. And I've heard about the Tesseract, but honestly, more in a fictional setting than a practical or realistic one. So before we dive in, as usual, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. And Janet, thank you so much for taking time out to discuss this with us. Looking forward to it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. All the better for seeing you again and having you interview me again. So thank you for that.
Only but a pleasure. Only but a pleasure. Looking forward to this because, as I say, I've heard about the Tesseract, but I think for some of our listeners, at least out there, most of us know it from a fictional standpoint. Marvel has done quite a bit of work with it in the comic book world, right? But in real terms, what does this all mean to us? So, give us a brief introduction to the Tesseract. What is this about the very fabric of existence? Because again, if I look at from what I know from my own experience with tarot, numerology, sacred geometry, etc., all the spiritual dynamisms that we're all aware of, the Tesseract has never really featured. So where does this all kind of fit in?
So the Tesseract is something that's been very hidden from us, and what we had in our scope and what we were exposed to has been Metatron's cube up until very
Mm,
recently. So the Tesseract is also one dimension further than Metatron's cube. And so it's not something that our minds have ever been able to kind of wrap themselves around. So there's a whole history behind the Tesseract and Metatron's cube.
Now that is interesting already because to our listeners, I don't know if our audience noticed, but if you have a look at the first slide there again, we talk about how it's able to guide our spiritual evolution. And then in the second slide, we're talking about flow and rhythm and all of those things. And this instantly, when I first started to see your videos and the information that you're wanting to share on the Tesseract, instantly really got my interest because, as I said to you earlier in preparation for this interview, it felt more in flow, where everything else that I know about sacred geometry has always felt very confined. It hasn't felt flowing. It's felt very, I don't like the word stagnant, but it has definitely felt as though so far and no further. This is the line in the sand. This is as far as you go. Whereas the Tesseract, as you said, there's that difference between the third and the fourth dimension where there's actual movement. Whereas in the 3D, it feels like the shape is set and that's it. You can't go any further than that. How does that now start to come in if we look at what we're already aware about in terms of sacred geometry?
Well, to even depict a 4D shape is not possible, and to depict infinity and life and something that's living and breathing, because that is what the Tesseract is. It's
Mm,
a living and a breathing, opening us up to source energy. And for the past 3 million years, we've had simulations and DNA changes and so on that have actually kept us separated from source through the dark ages. And all of those contracts have expired. So now we are once again reconnecting with source and hopefully going to be able to upgrade our DNA in our persons and our understanding and what we can do and how powerful we actually are to what the humans were originally meant to be, which is an image or a spark of source. So that has been dimmed, and Metatron's cube has had a hand in that as well.
Now that also is interesting to me because to those of you who are having a look at the slide right now that we put up, how sacred geometry literally fits into absolutely everything in this world. Okay, we see it constantly. But something that always struck me, if we're talking about the Fibonacci sequence, etc., it doesn't have an end. You look at the Nautilus shell again, sunflowers, those spirals really don't stop. And yet sacred geometry in and of itself, again, is that confined space. Whereas in nature, the walls are removed. And I think that for me has always been interesting. Why are we putting things into quite literally a box? And yet in nature, when we're seeing these same sacred geometric patterns, they don't have an end. There's the ability to go on for an infinite amount of space and time. Not how is that reflected? Because you've kind of answered that already. But is that more us getting to grips with nature and what nature already has inherently built and freeing our minds from the confines that we've essentially put on ourselves?
Okay, so that in itself could be an entire video because what we've been living in is a simulation
Mm,
based on Metatron's cube, which is linked to the Fibonacci sequence and the Fibonacci spiral, which is an inorganic, not organic. It's an inorganic, um, confined, let's say, a spiral of death. It was meant to come to an end by agreements and contracts done on completely different levels to where we live. And so even the nature that you see around you on the screen, you can see the nautilus shell, the sunflower, the snowflake. These are all part of the simulation that
mm,
are designed on the inorganic spiral. Where Metatron's cube, the spiral is called the Christ spiral, which is the Christ consciousness, which is a living, breathing spiral. And so everything in nature in time is also going to be changing and morphing to fit in with the new organic, living, infinite spiral. This one is a finite spiral. It was meant to come to an end. Um, and
mm.
so that's where we are. It's quite difficult to explain,
No, I think
but
you've encapsulated that so beautifully because that to me already says that in real time we're going to be able to witness how consciousness is shaping and affecting reality. Because I think as more people start to recognize the capability of the Tesseract versus Metatron's cube, as you say, the more those finite spirals are going to start coming to an end, and we're going to see more shifts and change actually happening in the world around us. But now I would like to talk a little bit more about Metatron's cube because we're talking about that finite space. We're talking about that, and I'm going to use a slightly harder word, that imprisonment that has been there for so long. Why did that happen? Why is it ending now? And of course, we're going to be talking a bit more about what's coming next, which is the Tesseract. Maybe you'd like to talk a bit about that first, about where we were, because they always say, in order to know where you're going, you need to know where you've come from.
okay. So the wars in the universe have always been about our souls. And Earth is a very, very special place. It's a keystone, which means everything pivots around it. It's a very special source-made place, and we are of source, and the other beings are mostly inorganic beings. And so the fight has always been for our soul. And to
Mm,
gain control of our soul, they've needed to gain control of Earth, because Earth herself has got a soul, and she's a construct of
mm,
source. And so with the wars, lots of things happened. And over 3 million years ago, the dark beings found themselves on one of the sister planets on Earth. That planet was blown up, but the dark beings survived and they fell through the central sun and they landed here on Earth. And so they didn't want to blow Earth up as well to get rid of them. So what they decided to do was to contain them, to keep them kind of imprisoned so they can't escape and get out there and cause more chaos in the multiverse. And so Metatron's cube is an energetic shape that was placed around Earth. Now, if you look inside Metatron's cube, you will see you have an upward triangle and a downward triangle. Now, the upward triangle is an illustration of the upper astral, the dimensions from 1D upwards, and the downward triangle is the lower astral, and you'll see that they canceled each other out.
Mm.
You know, as above, so below, they canceled each other out, which means that for the last 3 million years, through the dark ages until 2023, no new souls were made, but they needed us here on Earth as batteries, trying so hard to get that tipping point where they can capture our souls before their contracts expired, which they didn't manage to do for the first time in forever. And so a while ago, there was the quantum flip. The bottom triangle of the lower astral literally flipped up and merged with the upper astral, and those contracts came to an end, and those beings were all sent back to source. The experiment was over because it was by mutual agreement. Alpha and Omega, the dark and the light side of source, as above, so below. With the quantum flip, we are now in the light age. There is no more dark to this, and that's why we've gone not anymore talking about the Alpha and the Omega, but talking about the golden age. And so we have gone into a golden age where there is only light. As soon as we reconnect with source, we get into the now, which takes us out of all the simulations and matrices and so on. And there were many. I have all the details of 18 different matrices, and there were more than that. And the different simulations that we've been living in, literally thousands, millions of them, and they are almost all removed now. And so the Tesseract has come in. Now 4D is a place between 3D and 5D. So 4D is a passageway, a holding space where spiritual growth and spiritual tests and trials and tribulations take place. And it's in that place where you decide, are you continuing on the Christ spiral, or are you going to stay on the spiral of death, which is the Fibonacci spiral? Because that timeline crossed in 2023, and now those timelines are diverging. And so it's quite a process, quite a lot to take in.
Indeed.
But the 4D space is a holding space where you have to kind of grow spiritually from 3D before you're ready to enter 5D. And what the Tesseract is, it's a 4D shape. And so it takes us into that, and it opens us up into infinity and into love. It just takes us into this beautiful heart space of source, love, and life, and eternity kind of thing. And so we've got out of the prison now. But you know, there's an old saying, it's just popped into my mind now, that when you've got a bird in a cage, sometimes you can open that cage door and they don't fly out. And so we need to make that decision. Are we moving forward, or are we going to stay with the old? And that is how we make the choice between whichever spiral we are moving forward. We know them as timelines. Timelines are actually simulations. But as soon as you connect to source and the infinite love that you can access through the geometry of the Tesseract, then you get into the now. And in the now, there are no simulations. It's just us and source.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you for the confirmation that I'm not going insane. Because probably ever since I was a child, I've had this constant scream going on inside me, just this absolute primal scream that is dying to get let out. And it's purely because on some level, I've felt so constrained by exactly what you said here, karma, rebirth, and forgetfulness. Because I could feel that there's memories that I have. It's like a dream when you wake up and you know you had a good dream or you had a bad dream or whatever the case may be, but you can't remember it. And the more you're trying to remember it, the more it goes away from you. And that's just felt like my entire life, and then even time and space, when I start to talk to quantum physicists and that sort of thing, and they're going, time and space is just a hypothetical construct. We use it to be able to allow our consciousness at its current level to understand the world around us. But it doesn't, neither of those things exist. Excuse me. So then when you're talking about, things like moving out of that, moving into a space where there is that liberation, there is that direct connection to the eternal now, which is also quite scary, I think, for a lot of people, because the eternal now then means if that's the truth, then the past, the future, and the present are all one. That might feel overwhelming to some, but I think then also it demands a certain level of responsibility. Because if the future and the past and the present are all one and the eternal now is here and you are living in it consistently, then whatever unfolds is up to you. Because you can choose to go, as you say, through all the timelines, those different matrices, or you can choose to be connected directly to source. And I do definitely feel as though that awakening has started to happen hugely over the last couple of years, because I can see how more and more people, and not just in the spiritual community, lay people are going, something's not quite right. The old beliefs that I had just don't really resonate anymore. And people are starting to be willing to ask deeper questions, to challenge the status quo that they have accepted their entire lives. And I feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel as though that is the energy of the Tesseract, because it is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. It is perfect in its continued expansion, as opposed to perfect in stagnation. Is that about right?
That's exactly right. And it
Okay.
brings in the sovereignty as well. And so, as a sovereign being, you now have the right to say, no, I do not concede.
Oh,
I'm not going with the old constructs, and moving forward in natural law, which is simply do no harm. It's as simple as that.
beautiful, beautiful. I'm actually going to read the slide out to our audience because you said something so incredibly profound here, Janet. The Tesseract is not merely a geometric form. It is a living key, and this part I really love, a divine breath folding in and out, endlessly recreating the essence of love. Where older constructs may have bound, the Tesseract frees, realigning us with Source and restoring the soul's innate ability to return home between lifetimes. I love that on so many different levels, because anybody who's grown up in the West and is familiar with um, the Christian way of doing things will tell you that, when Adam and Eve were created, the first thing that God did was breathe the breath of life into man, right? This image really starts to display the beauty of that power, the beauty of that evolution that was right there, and the fact that it's able to free someone, because that's something else that never really I couldn't understand. Why is it I can't remember my past lives? Or if I do, it's snippets. It's not like the whole thing. And why can't I necessarily remember the between times? Why am I stuck with only, again, snippets of it? Where to me, it would make so much more sense, like the Ascended Masters often say, where they're able to instantiate and leave at will and have full memory of what came before, what's coming next, etc., etc., etc. If I could ask you a personal opinion, do you think that that is something that is going to become, and not necessarily right here, right now, although what is now, except for the eternal now, is that something that is going to become more possible for the population at large?
Okay, are you talking about the remembering? And yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there are records of all of us,
Mm.
in the what is it called? The mm, anyway, it's where
Oh,
all the
the
information
Akashic
is stored.
records.
No, not the
Ah,
Akashic records. The Akashic records are also quite a construct, and they've also been
yes.
fiddled with. In the Oh man, I'll think of it now. But anyway, so there are records of all of us where it's not records of us personally in this lifetime, but it's soul records with all our names, everything that we've ever done.
Mm.
It does exist. Everything has been so much hidden from us. And yes, we are gradually going to be remembering more and more. And interesting now that the souls that have been coming in from 2023 are new souls that have now been made by the light progenitors, because the dark
Ah,
can't create, only the light can create. And so for the first time since the Tesseract has been
amazing.
placed around the Earth, we've been able to leave this planet between lifetimes, not get into the entrapment cycle, which we know as the reincarnation cycle.
Mm.
And there are new souls that have been coming in as well. So it's kind of opened the gateways, the portals, whatever you want to call it. So that once again, we have our own choices of where we want to go and what we want to do. Now, interesting as well is that one of the simulations that we had was the one to age us. So we're also going to be living a lot longer and once again regain the ability to be able to self-heal and regenerate and so on, and live much longer lives should we choose to do that.
And that feels so aligned for me because that's something that I've been saying for ages. Is it not just possible that our age factor or aging factor is, for lack of a better term, all in our heads? And
It's a
as
simulation. Mm.
as Professor Dumbledore so famously said in the Harry Potter movies, of course it's all in your head, but why should that make it any less real? Which is the truth, right? Our thoughts do shape reality. So if you think that you're going to live to 80 and it's going to be a difficult time, that is what is going to happen because you create your own reality. But that then does bring us back to the difference between the evolutions of this cube. We're talking here on the slide about what is a tesseract, and we know the 2D, the square, right? We start drawing those as kids in school, even before that. And then at some point, you start to understand what a cube is, which is, it's a very familiar expansion. We understand how that works, why it's three-dimensional. But then that fourth dimension, and I want to talk about this a little bit more, and we'll obviously get into that a bit further on in the presentation. But you say here 4D is a dynamic, breathing, and endlessly unfolding form. And something you mentioned to me before we started is so true. We have been taught not how to think, but what to think. And because we've been taught what to think, we've stopped at the third dimension. So the fourth dimension of something that is a dynamic, breathing, and endlessly unfolding form, something that expands infinitely, embodies the continuous flow of creation, is something I think that our minds initially balk at because it's not what we're used to. We're used to a confined way of doing things. And like I was saying to one of my best friends earlier, it's because we oftentimes, again, societally and all the rest of it, we want to be told what to do. We don't want to be taught how to think and how to be. So we've needed those constrictions to a certain degree, that three-dimensional way of doing things. And that has then bled through into every aspect of our society, from laws that are passed down to our religious beliefs, to our societal beliefs, et cetera, because again, we don't actually, not we don't want, we crave autonomy and we crave sovereignty, but we've been taught to be constrained. And I think this is now just this evolution in shapes is now starting to break that mold where people are going, I get to be an autonomous being. I get to make my own decisions with the only law being as what is it? The tenet from ceremonial magic. It's ah and let harm none be the whole of the law. And that's it. As long as it does no harm, do what you will.
Mhm. And Stephan,
Nice.
I've
Yeah.
just remembered that word I couldn't remember earlier, the Hall
Yes.
of Records.
Ah, yes.
Hall of
Um,
Records.
is
That's
that
where
is
the
that
Holy
similar to the
Spirit of
halls
the
of
Earth
a
and
Amenti that is
creates.
mentioned in the Emerald tablets?
No, that's
No,
also a completely
also a
different
construct.
topic.
Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting. We're going to have to do another video on that then, for sure, because I'm very intrigued. But now, Janet, you obviously are, as you mentioned earlier, offline. You are not a sacred geometry, that word, but you are
Yes,
a
sacred
master numerologist.
geometrist.
There we go.
I'm a
But you are a
master
master numerologist.
numerologist.
How do the two mesh, or where do they mesh?
Remember that numbers underlie everything. Numbers are a universal cosmic language.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got spirals and things like, for example, the Christ spiral from the Tesseract has got a
Mm.
number sequence. So as soon as you put a number to it, you've got my attention. And even the dimensions, 4D versus 3D, 5D, as soon as you put a number to it, my mind starts
Ah.
going in a different direction. And so the number sequence of the Christ spiral or Christ consciousness spiral from the Tesseract is completely different to the Fibonacci spiral from Metatron's cube. And so that already got my attention. And then Metatron's cube is based on the number 6. And the number 13 comes in there as well, where Metatron's cube is based on a doubling. So you get to the point of 8, which is infinity, and that's a cube. When you double 8, you get to 16. Now, 16 in numerology is a doorway into the spiritual. And so with a 6 in 16, it opens the heart and it opens up the love. And so it also folds in on itself, and it can be very much linked to, in a very different way, symbolically, to the chambers of the heart and so on and
Mm.
so on. So there's a lot of very interesting things. I'm not an expert at sacred geometry, but it does get my attention, especially when it helps me to make sense of things that I've always inherently also felt don't sit right with me.
Mm.
Religion messed up my entire childhood. It put me
Mm.
into such fear. And so finding these things out, where for some people it's a little bit scary, for me is like a liberation. It's like, yeah, I knew it.
Yes,
And
yes.
so we all have that inner knowing, but it just depends on how much we are brainwashed, or how much we stop ourselves from thinking, so that we don't no longer fit in with our environments and
Mm.
the religious upbringing we were brought into. So all of these things are going to push people right out of their comfort zone. And so I also want to urge people to share this carefully, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Stephan, maybe you can put it into different wording that's more eloquent than mine, but you don't want to shock people, and we've already been through enough. So my hope is that this video and other videos and the books that I'm writing, and so my hope is that they reach people that are ready for them, and that they're not going to cause any further cognitive dissonance
Mm.
and a
I
confusion
think
in a world that is so confusing.
I do believe that just with the intention that we have with sharing this, it'll find its way to the right people at the right time. Because I think, just like you said, for a lot of people, and I'm seeing this more and more and more when I'm speaking to friends of mine who don't have a spiritual bend at all. They have their religion and that's it. And they're questioning. I mean, I have a very good friend in Cape Town who, for the longest time, I've known her now for about, gosh, 20 years. And probably for the last 15 years, she's been questioning and questioning. And she'll sit there and she'll say, but there has to be more. This can't be it. And I'm looking and I'm going, but you're not even spiritually inclined. You like your beer with your rugby on a Saturday, and you go to mass once a year, and that's it. That's your life. Everything else is about business, and that's it. And now seeing this, the 8 and the 16, the manifestation and the expansion and that energy coming through, I can see how it was probably not an instantaneous thing that happened in 2023. I have a distinct feeling that the divine probably started to prepare people a little bit over the last while, probably even longer than the last 20 years. Because you just look at how far we've come in human history in the last 100 years. Because for the past 7,000 years of accepted and recorded history, we were riding around on horses. In the last 100 years, we went from horse-drawn carriages to putting drones on Mars and men on the moon and International Space Station and all the rest of it. It doesn't quite make sense that our minds were able to start expanding that fast, so quickly. And we're seeing that bleeding into other areas of life. And now we're starting to come in, I think, on the spiritual side, and people are starting to go, okay, I want to know a little bit more about how this all works. Now, speaking of how this all works, from your personal experience, and again, you are not someone who is qualified in sacred geometry, but what was your experience when you ran into the Tesseract?
It was just the only thing I can say, it was mind-blowing. It was just mind-blowing. And even with that image of mind-blowing, you've got this image of like, well, everything that was keeping you contained is like blown wide open. And I love doing research. So, of course, there I went, and I leave no stone unturned until I get to the bottom of things. Yes. I don't necessarily drill with sacred geometry into the details because it's not my detailed field like numerology. Once I've got a big picture, I'm happy. I want the big picture. And then I want to see, how does numerology underlie that? Because the numbers underlie everything. So I want to see, what are the patterns? What's happening underneath? How does it all fit in? And the minute I attach numbers to things, they just make sense. I mean, numbers don't lie. You got one apple in this hand, you got one apple in this hand, you got two apples. Like, it's plain and simple. Numbers don't lie.
Absolutely. No, that is beautiful. Now you've written something quite beautiful here as well. The Tesseract acts as a beacon, guiding your consciousness back to its primordial essence, paving the way for spiritual ascent. Now, for anybody who's ever studied any of the esoteric arts, we know that imagery is incredibly important because it's able to convey things that words are just too clumsy to do. And I know for myself, the moment I started to see the Tesseract and what you were doing with it, it definitely was exactly that. It was a beacon. It made me go, huh, that's interesting. This is something that I want to explore a bit more. And I love the fact that it feels alive, where everything else, even the flower of life, has felt, what's the word I'm looking for? Old is the wrong word. It's felt outmoded and outdated, is the wording I would use. It has been an important part of my journey to understand the fabric of the existence that we have been in, as you quite rightly said, in this matrix. But it's been insufficient to the task at hand in terms of the expansion of consciousness that I was really looking for. This feels so much more aligned in terms of allowing space, and we, in psychological spaces and even in woke terms, we love that phrase of let me hold space for you. But there's been not enough around holding space where you can move into that space and move out of it at will. The Tesseract really does feel like it gives you that amazing ability to connect with something that is not constrained, that is not going to hold you back, that's not going to force you into a box, but rather allows you to choose your own path of evolution, whatever that looks like for you, as we said, as long as it harms none. Right? And brings us to your next slide. We're no longer bound by outdated constructs or limiting beliefs. Let's talk about embracing that flow and how that relates to divine love, as well as the ability to do what we were put here to do, which is take that spark of divine energy and create. right? We're not here to just live and die. We're here to be creators, just like the ancient texts say, let us make man in our image. And I always said that sentence always felt a bit um, reductive until you start to think, well, if you're made in God's image, who does not have five fingers and five toes on each hand and foot, God is energy, divine is energy being. So when God says, let us make them in our image, it's not about the physical, it's about our abilities to create. But talk to me a bit about this from that perspective, if you would, please, Janet.
Okay, just stop me if I'm not
Mm,
exactly answering your question. Okay, so in the 4D space, the 4D space is a space of manifestation,
mm,
the law of manifestation, which is an active thing. You have to visualize, you have to do what you need to do, you have to live as if it's already there. So the law of manifestation is very much a 4D space, which is what the Tesseract is taking us through and beyond. So in the old construct, we were kept, what is the word? Inactive,
disconnected,
disconnected, passive is the word I'm
pass.
looking for.
Yes, yes.
Because we were taught to pray, for example, in Christianity, if it's
Mm,
your will, and you sit and you wait for the Savior, you wait for the second coming, you wait for the Savior is also a simulation, a dark construct, whether
mm,
it's a Trump that's saving us, Jesus, Muhammad, doesn't matter who it is there to keep you passive. Because when humanity steps up and starts taking control of their lives, doing no harm and moving forward, we break the mold into something completely new. And so the number 4 is a number of hard work, physical hard work. So 4D is still physical like the 3D,
mm,
but it's moving into 5D, which is a much lighter place with fewer boundaries and so on. So 4D says you need to manifest, you need to visualize something, you need to feel it, and you need to actually start doing it. So
mm,
no longer sitting passively waiting for the second coming of whoever, whatever, or for some or other president or somebody to save the world. It means you step forward, you become a sovereign person, and sovereignty is freedom with responsibility and doing what you need to do. So there's a lot that we can chat about around that as well, but I hope I've kind of, and also what I want to say is that even though, because when you look at that tesseract on the cards, even though your conscious mind doesn't understand it, your soul does. Your soul knows, your soul understands it, your subconscious mind has known it forever. And we have known on a soul level that we are here to break through the old constructs and into the new construct. We know that. So that tesseract is like, just imagine you were under hypnosis for so long, and you go under hypnosis and you get told before you go under hypnosis that when I snap my fingers you will wake up. So the tesseract for me is that when you see the tesseract, and I'm just going all goosies now, that tesseract is kind of like, oh, I'm waking up out of this slumber and now I'm moving forward. Our souls know. We know, we knew it, that we were here for exactly this.
absolutely, absolutely. And I could not agree with you more. And in fact, I wrote a very short poem last night because as you were saying all of that, I immediately was thinking about how for a lot of people, I think that this might be terrifying because that level of responsibility is not something we've had. Like you said, the old reality has kept us passive. And that's been nice. Like when you're a child and mommy and daddy tell you, This is what time you're going to eat. This is what time you're going to nap. This is what time you're going to play. Life is simple because you don't have to worry about what to do next. Everything's plotted out for you. Moving now into a space where you are the conscious creator. You are not trapped by fate. You are able to take control of your own life. That is inspiring, but it's equally terrifying. So I want to just say to our audience, I'm right there with you. This is the poem I wrote last night, actually in regards to something else, but it fits in so nicely. And please, nobody come for me. I'm not a poet by any stretch of the imagination. I just like to jot things down from time to time. But it goes, ecstasy and trepidation mingle, desire and terror. Every atom of my being screaming, run. But with a thought whispered on a single exhalation, louder than a star being born, the soul whispers, what if? And that to me is what the Tesseract does.
Love,
Is,
yes,
you,
love.
you're used to a way of doing things, and we know change is difficult, change is hard, and the human mind only likes stress 10% either way. So whether it's a good thing or bad, the mind doesn't like stress. It just doesn't. So there is going to be a large part of us, as I think people are watching this, going, ugh, I'm not quite sure I'm ready for that. My only question to everybody would be try and listen for that whisper in the dark that goes, but what if? Just what if? So you've been mentioning throughout a little bit about the cards, etc. So to those who are listening, Janet, as we said, is a master numerologist. She has put together a beautiful set of numerology cards. And if you follow her at all on social media, you see that I've started using them in my own practice. I work with the tarot and I work with astrology as well. And it's been so interesting how learning about the building blocks of the universe, numbers, the language that underpins all creation, bringing that into my work using iconography has been able to open up my abilities just so much further. So, as mentioned, Janet has created a beautiful set of cards together with one of our joint best friends who is an amazing designer. And I'm looking forward to interviewing her next and soon. But what we would ask you to do, there we go. That's the cards. Those are the cards right there. Janus Numerology, beautiful. When you get your own set, hold a Tesseract card. Look at the sacred geometry that is imprinted on that and just feel the rhythm of it. And I can tell everybody now that whilst it is caught in a moment in time, all right, so it'll feel, or not feel, it'll look initially to be constrained. The more you look at it, the more you'll start to see that no, it's not. It's even though it's not moving, it feels as though it is. So you've said something here quite nice. The tesseract itself will orchestrate the rest, guiding you gently into deeper understanding. And that is our hope for everyone. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an absolute delight to share some of this beautiful information. And I do know that we've only just scratched the surface of it all. But for those of you who are looking to dive deeper, to expand your own understanding, your own spirituality, your own meditative practices, there's an ebook that is coming out called When the Oracle Wore a Laughing Cloak. And Janet, you have an upcoming video series as well. So if you haven't done so already, please like this video. Make sure to subscribe so that you can get access to all the videos as they drop on Janet's channel. And hit the link below as well to be able to go and have a look at the deck and purchase it. We're able to ship anywhere in the world. So we look forward to joining you on this beautiful journey. Janet, before we sign off, any final thoughts from you?
Well, I do hope you all going to purchase the ebook When the Oracle Wore a Laughing Cloak. It's actually, the title's been changed to The Oracle Wears a Laughing Cloak.
Ah,
And it's a very light-hearted, poetic look
mm,
at the heavy things in life, at numerology. It's fun. Anari has created the most amazing characters to go with this. So you see the numbers portrayed as characters. You will see Metatron's cube coming up against the Tesseract and eventually conceding, and
mm,
the spirals chatting, and the flower of life. And the whole the whole book is based on don't take life so seriously. Just enjoy life. We've been through so much, and it doesn't mean it has to be serious. We're not going into this serious space when we get into spirituality and
Yep.
all of these timelines and things. Like, just have some fun with it. And so, what I would like to leave you with is just don't be so serious. Don't be afraid of things. Experiment. Be a little bit
Hmm.
whimsical with it, and
Hmm.
see the lighter side of life.
I like that. I like bringing a dose of whimsy into my day wherever I can. So that is beautiful. Well, Janet, thank you so much again for your time here with us today. It has been an absolute
Thank
I,
you,
ac-
Stephan. Thank you so, so, so much.
my
Um,
absolute pleasure. I look forward to continuing this series with you so that we can learn even more about how this all works and hopefully starting to wake more and more people up to the potential that exists just on the other side of what we have known to be true. So, Janet, thank you again. And until next time, have a wonderful day further.
you too. Thank
Bye
you.
now. Bye.